Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Matt Leshford with 1836 Property Management, as always in beautiful Austin, Texas. This video is to discuss whether changing management companies will solve your problems. Whenever we have a client or an investor who has a significant issue, whether it's tenant behavior, damages to the properties, maintenance on the property, something like that, the first thing they do is, oh my goodness, how can I avoid it? And sometimes that means throwing the property management company into the bus because you can't get your hands around the tenant or the maintenance issue or whatever it may be. So we wanted to give you guys a video to discuss this topic and also let you know whether or not it could be warranted or helpful. As property managers, we go to collegial events where members of trade groups and we chat with each other. And those of us that have been doing this for decades kind of know each other locally. And so believe it or not, if you call company B and you're leaving company A, those owners may actually call each other and say, hey, John and Susie gave me a call and said they were going to come over, but I saw you manage their property. What's the scoop? And it's not about sharing personal information. What it is about is protecting our companies from people that want to circumvent the rules. So, for an example, someone with company A and finds asbestos on the property. And company A goes, hey, we can't deal with that because we're not certified, whatever it may be. So they go, no problem. So they fire them. They go to company B and they go, what asbestos? Those kind of things are a threat to all of us, including the workers and the residents that are at these properties. So please don't think anybody's out to discuss personal or private information, but we are out to do the right thing. And hey, some other companies may be able to serve you if you're open and honest about that. But we need to make sure we're all being transparent about everything. So the number one reason that people want to switch companies is because of maintenance issues. They feel like either they shouldn't have happened or they couldn't be solved. An example we've got is that we had a client, and this is a true example, cancel their property management agreement for two reasons. One was the maintenance items were taking too long, and they felt like they should have been wrapped up. And the second was the structure of the company. They actually preferred to just speak with one person for all their issues. So let's dig into those. Once we looked at the metrics and said, okay, and we do monitor these weekly at 1836. We discuss how long it takes to get things completed, how many open tasks there are, all that good stuff. But nevertheless, into this one item, why in the world was this taking so long that it upset the owners? And what we found is that this was a custom cooktop. They didn't make parts for this. We couldn't even find out who installed it. We called multiple vendors. Nobody could service it. And so we were going through that process, and the solution may have been to replace it if it wasn't functional. But the owners didn't want to hear that. But we were supposed to solve all those problems, even though it was something we didn't create, we didn't have anything to do with when it was installed, and we have no idea who did. The second one is that they wanted to speak to one person every time they called. Well, I got to be honest with you, I would love to go back to 1980 as well. But the world doesn't function that way any longer. And there are a few property management companies that are small enough that you can get all of John and you call John and John solves your problems. The bigger problem arises is when John is sick or John's not there or something happens to John and all the information about your property, including the files on it and everything else are lost. That is a major problem. So you may not need a massive company that is nationwide, who doesn't care about anybody. But if you have a one-man show, just be aware that there's a lot of risk in that. So somewhere in the medium is at the middle of that's kind of where we lie. And we do have departments, but we have people overseeing tasks. So someone is always responsible. So of course, we've got a hierarchy in the company. Your property manager, however, at 1836 is always the responsible party for whatever happens. So if you're having challenges with an assistant, with maintenance, with whatever it may be, you can always just go direct to your property manager and say, hey, look, something's not making sense. I need you to dig into this and tell me what I'm missing or if I'm not missing anything. That's the most effective way to communicate. So switching companies may give you a different perspective on it, a different take on it, a different workflow, but it may create some other issues for you as well. Keep in mind that very big companies operate out of cubicles out of state for your property here in Austin. So you may have an agent here that's part of the MLS to lease it, but there's no one here to oversee that property or that has physically walked it when it comes to the management side of the operation. So tenant problems is another reason that people depart property managers. They go, you put these tenants in place or you can't control these tenants. Or one example we had was that there was water inside a place. The tenant refused to let us in. The owners were furious. Why don't you force your way in? Well, ladies and gents, this is not a war zone. We can't force people to do anything. We can't force our way in through locked doors, even if we wish we could. So if you have a property management company that has one bad tenant and put in place for you, and you're frustrated, it's reasonable to be frustrated. However, I will let you know that 5% of the people we put in place are saints, 5% are sinners, and 90% are just trying to get along. So it is possible for you to follow in that 5% that gets a bad resident. Twice in a row, it gets a little harder to accept. I'll be real honest with you. We had one owner, it was a married couple, so owners, I guess, that had two bad tenants in a row. And they were infuriated with us, and they were furious. And we failed them in their words. And I got to tell you, it was really frustrating on our side as well. We've never had two bad tenants back to back, but that owner got it. And it was the luck of the draw. We looked back through, we did research on everything to see if we dropped the ball somewhere. And the truth is they used the same criteria as all the other properties, which we update over time. And everyone passed it. There was no fraud, and the results still weren't pleasant. So I'm not going to say it never happens, but if you get a bad tenant, you're probably in that 5%. Changing property management companies may not help that if you move to another company. If you get two in a row, fair enough. If you want to fire us after that, I understand there's no hard feelings. Keep in mind that the biggest challenge we have when it comes to residents and enforcement of rules is the agents that are sales agents that are doing a favor to investors to put a tenant in place. They're using forms that we don't use. They're not helping them move in. The property is not professionally ready as a property management company would do it. They're not following all the legal guidelines, and we're behind the eight ball before we ever get started. So those are the biggest challenges we have is when someone else brings us a resident. Hey, just manage this property. My cousin's going to live in it. That is a disaster waiting to happen. So that's another one. As we mentioned, the leases. We have custom lease that we use across all our properties, and it was compiled from leases across the nation, believe it or not. We actually cut it up, literally in paper, put it back together, had attorneys review it, and left clauses in that we thought were the best practices nationwide. The standard lease form in Texas is the Texas Association of Realtors forms, or there's a Texas Apartment Association form for apartments. And those are kind of promulgated and used across the state. However, they're the lowest common denominator, and they're not going to give you all the protections that somebody who's really dialed in would. So when you get those leases in place, they're signed, there's no going back. It's too late. So staying with a great property manager will keep you with a custom lease if they have it, and keep you on the forefront of everything you can do to protect yourself. So the last but not least is probably the most important factor I find for selecting a property management company. When you shop for anything out there, I don't want you to go out and shop and say, what are the cheapest I can get? Even when it comes to shoes, what are the cheapest shoes I can buy? Well, the shoes aren't going to last too long. What is the cheapest car I can buy? Well, it's not going to run further than the neighborhood. So you also don't need to have a Rolls Royce or a pair of fancy shoes. So what you really want is the greatest bang for your buck. We know as property managers how much it costs to pay employees to do the job. And anyone that is offering you something cheap, free, or saving $20 or playing let's make a deal doesn't stick to their guns and understand how the business works so that they can do it for years to come. If they're willing to play let's make a deal with you, what are they playing let's make a deal on when it comes to your tenant or the other vendors? It's going to come back to bite you. So shop by return. Instead of asking, what do you charge? Ask, what do I get? I'm going to tell you that 9.9 out of 10 companies is going to say, we answer the phone. We're the nicest people, blah, blah, blah. Don't settle for that. Give me your metrics. How many days on market are your properties on average? Keep in mind, this varies month to month throughout the year. What is your return on equity across your entire portfolio? On average, with all your clients, what kind of money are you making them? Ask some questions that are hard to answer like that. What is your labor or personnel to unit ratio? So I know when I call in, it's not 500 to 1, no one answers the phone. See if they can give you those answers. I dare you. Shop by those criteria and you're going to be pleasantly surprised. At 1836, we're delivering over 10% return on equity across all properties across our entire area. That's an average. The benchmark is above 12 for most of our clients. So let us know how we can help you. We're here. If you have questions about property management, we can help you in any way, or investing in Austin. That's what we're here to do. Find us online at 1836propertymanagement.com or give us a call today, 512-994-4323. Thanks for your time.